1962, Pontiac Super Duty, 421. In 1961, Pontiac won 30 of 52 NASCAR races. The engine responsible cost its buyers almost as much as the car it came in. The Super Duty 421 was built by a team led by general manager Bunky Knudsen and engineer Malcolm McKellar. They started with Pontiac's standard 389 block, bored it out to 421 cubic inches, and filled it with 4-bolt mains, forged steel rods and crankshaft. Mickey Thompson forged aluminum pistons, and a McKellar No. 10 camshaft with over 300 degrees of duration. On the drag strip, it ran twin Carter 500 cubic feet per minute 4-barrel carburetors on an aluminum intake. On the NASCAR oval, it ran a single 4-barrel. The official 405 horsepower rating was fiction. Motor Trend tested one in 1962 and measured 465 horsepower at the flywheel. A confidential internal GM memo later confirmed Smokey Yunick had verified output closer to 468. To reduce weight, engineers developed aluminum exhaust manifolds, bumpers, and intake manifolds. They cut approximately 130 holes through the chassis frames of the most extreme cars, which became known as the Swiss cheese Catalinas. The aluminum exhaust manifolds had a documented limit. Smokey Yunick reported they melted after 10 laps on a NASCAR track. The engine option cost $2,250 in 1962. A base Catalina started at $2,725. Pontiac built approximately 180 of them across the entire production run. On big ovals, the 421 Super Duty Catalinas pulled away from the field consistently. In January 1963, GM ordered Pontiac to end all racing activities immediately. It was not NASCAR that stopped the Super Duty 421. It was the manufacturer's own boardroom. The engine had moved so far from production reality that even Pontiac could not defend it. NASCAR tightened its definitions of what qualified as stock equipment directly as a result. A surviving Swiss cheese Catalina today fetches close to $500,000 at auction. 1963. Chevrolet 427 Mystery Motor. The 1963 Chevrolet 427 Mystery Motor had a compliance problem nobody discussed publicly. NASCAR required 50 engines to be built for race eligibility. Chevrolet built 20. Teams shuffled the same engines between garages before each inspection, repainting them to give the appearance of a full complement. At one point, a complete mystery motor was loaned to the Holman Moody Ford team as supposed proof that 50 existed. The engine was developed in complete secrecy under the official designation Mark II. Chevrolet's PR department denied its existence entirely. No photos were released, no specifications published, and the company refused all media discussion. The only public acknowledgement was a single article in Hot Rod magazine in May 1963, which Chevrolet cooperated with while simultaneously denying the engine existed. Its cylinder head design, nicknamed the porcupine head for the unusual angle of its canted valves, featured 2.19-inch intake valves, 1.72-inch exhaust valves, and 12.4:1 compression. Pre-race dyno testing produced 620 horsepower. Race outputs were conservatively estimated at 530 to 540 horsepower by engineers inside the program. Before the Daytona 500, the engine had already appeared at the same track in two Z06 Corvette Stingrays during the American Challenge Cup. Almost nobody knew at the time. Those two cars were the first production Corvettes ever fitted with a big block engine. At the 500 itself, Johnny Rutherford set a closed-course speed record of 165.183 miles per hour in qualifying. Through the rest of the 1963 season, mystery motor-powered cars won 7 races, took 9 pole positions, and recorded 13 top 5 finishes while entering only 33 of 55 events. GM's corporate racing ban ended the program before it could be fully developed. Without factory support, teams shelved the engine. 1964. Chrysler 426 race Hemi. Richard Petty led 184 of 200 laps at the 1964 Daytona 500. His Plymouth teammates finished second and third. Ford and General Motors teams left the track without a podium finish between them. The 426 race Hemi's hemispherical combustion chambers were not a new concept. Chrysler had used similar architecture in the 1950s, but the 1964 race version was purpose-built for competition. Its massive valves, cross-flow heads, and oversized ports produced approximately 550 horsepower at a time when most competitors were struggling to clear 400. It was not available at any dealership. NASCAR President Bill France ruled it illegal after the 1964 season. His position was that if Chrysler wanted to compete, the engine had to exist in showrooms. Chrysler refused, pulled their teams from NASCAR entirely for the 1965 season, and spent the year engineering a version that could meet homologation requirements. By 1966, the Street Hemi arrived, rated at 425 horsepower and available in Dodge and Plymouth models. It met the requirements. Petty won 27 races in 1967 alone, including 10 consecutive, all with the Hemi under the hood. The 1964 season had forced NASCAR to explicitly tie technical legality to showroom availability for the first time, a principle it has maintained ever since. 1964. Ford 427 SOHC Cammer. Ford built the 427 SOHC in direct response to Chrysler's Hemi. It replaced the pushrod valve train with a single overhead camshaft on each cylinder bank, added hemispherical combustion chambers, and produced between 616 and 657 horsepower in race trim. NASCAR banned it before it turned a single competitive lap. Bill France's position was identical to his ruling on the Chrysler Hemi. The Cammer had never appeared in a production vehicle. It was built in Ford's internal Skunk Works program with race-only components and no intention of public sale. France ruled it illegal before the 1965 season began. Ford redirected the Cammer to drag racing, where it became a dominant force in top fuel and funny car competition for years. The same characteristics that made it ineligible for NASCAR made it effective in the quarter mile. The Cammer never raced at Daytona, but forced NASCAR to define with precision how far manufacturer engineering could extend under the classification of stock. That definition has shaped the sport's technical regulations ever since. 1966, Chrysler 426 Street Hemi. Chrysler spent 1965 building the engine NASCAR required. The Street Hemi was available in both Dodge and Plymouth models, meeting the production threshold, and officially rated at 425 horsepower. Real output was closer to 480. Its camshaft profile was softened, its intake detuned, and its compression reduced enough to qualify as street legal. The race Hemi's fundamental architecture remained intact underneath those changes. Petty won 27 races in 1967, including 10 consecutive. The engine's combination of top-end power and reliability on long superspeedways was unmatched by anything Ford or General Motors fielded during the same period. The dominance created conditions NASCAR had not anticipated. Speeds at Talladega and Daytona approached 180 miles per hour. Safety infrastructure was not designed for those figures. By the early 1970s, NASCAR introduced displacement caps, restrictor plates, and aerodynamic regulations that effectively ended the big block era. The Street Hemi had pushed the sport to confront how much performance its track infrastructure could safely contain. 1968 Dodge Charger 500. The standard 1968 Dodge Charger had a design problem on superspeedways. Its recessed grille trapped air and generated lift at the front. Its tunneled rear window created a drag pocket behind the roofline. Ford's Torino was pulling away on the straights despite carrying comparable power. Chrysler's engineers went back to the wind tunnel. The Charger 500 replaced the recessed grille with a flush unit and filled in the rear window with flat, fastback glass. The changes were aerodynamically significant and visually subtle. In testing, the car gained approximately 10 miles per hour of top-end speed. Ford responded with the Torino Talladega. Chrysler countered with the Charger Daytona, featuring a 23-inch nose cone and a towering rear wing. NASCAR's first aerodynamic arms race had begun. By 1971, speeds exceeded 200 miles per hour. NASCAR introduced restrictions that ended the development cycle. The Charger 500 had demonstrated that airflow engineering produced measurable performance gains equivalent to significant engine upgrades. Once that was established, every manufacturer redirected resources accordingly, and the sport's regulations could not keep pace. 1969 Ford Boss 429. Ford built the Boss 429 to match Chrysler's Hemi on superspeedways. The engine's 429 cubic inches, semi-hemispherical combustion chambers, canted valves, and forged reinforced block required a chassis that did not exist in Ford's production lineup. To meet NASCAR's homologation requirement of 500 street cars, Ford contracted a specialist firm in Brighton, Michigan called CarCraft to hand-modify each Mustang individually. CarCraft widened the engine bay, relocated shock towers, and reworked the front suspension geometry on every single car to make the engine fit. The result was officially rated at 375 horsepower. Race versions exceeded 600. Paired with the aerodynamic Torino Talladega, the Boss 429 gave Ford 26 wins in 1969 and a manufacturer's championship. By 1971, new displacement limits had ended its competitive run. The car created to satisfy a rulebook requirement had become one of the most sought-after street machines Ford ever produced, with surviving examples regularly selling for six figures at auction. 1969, Chevrolet Zell1, Aluminium 427. The ZOL 1427 cut nearly 100 pounds from a standard iron 427 by casting the block, heads, and intake entirely in aluminium. It produced over 550 horsepower in race trim and offered better weight distribution and acceleration. Only 69 street versions were built, placed into Camaros and Corvettes through Chevrolet's COPO program, specifically to establish a production paper trail. NASCAR mandated cast iron construction for all eligible engines before the ZL1 could compete at the top level. The reasoning was competitive parity. An aluminium engine required materials and manufacturing capability that other manufacturers could not readily match. If left unregulated, it would shift competition away from driver skill and mechanical ingenuity toward corporate material science budgets. The ZL1 established that NASCAR's technical regulations needed to extend beyond displacement and horsepower to the fundamental materials engines were constructed from. That principle has remained embedded in the sports rulebook ever since. 2007 Toyota TRD NASCAR engine. When Toyota entered NASCAR's Premier Series in 2007, it brought an engine built on a clean sheet, designed from scratch using computational modeling, CNC machining, and precision casting optimized specifically for NASCAR's 358 cubic inch rule. It had no production car heritage. It was not an evolved street engine. It was a purpose-built racing unit that was legal in every measurable dimension. Rivals argued it violated the spirit of NASCAR's production-based philosophy. NASCAR launched technical reviews and found no violations. What followed was a comprehensive tightening of specifications across bore spacing, deck height, port shape, and combustion chamber design. The engine approval process was modernized. Parity became the governing principle in ways it had not been systematically enforced before. By 2008, the TRD engine had matured into one of the most reliable units in the field. The engine had not broken any rules. It had identified gaps in the existing ones, and NASCAR closed every gap it found. Every engine on this list had ultimately produced the same outcome.